Hey there, garden lovers! Today is January 18th, and this is a Garden a Day with Maidenbrock Gardens. Snowdrops. No, I'm not talking about the flakes that fall from the sky, although there are plenty of those at my house today. We're talking flowers here. The tiny white petals that hang down like a little fairy skirt and sit atop determined little green stems that burst through the cold ground against all odds, sometimes even through snow, this time of year. In the United States, you might be wondering what flowers these are. Snowdrops do grow here, but they're not as popular in the US as they are across the Atlantic. I don't grow them yet, although I might add a few in a forested area in my garden. They spread and make a welcoming blanket of petals along the forest floor. Although I get enough actual snow, so I'm not sure I need any more white on the ground. Anyway, we are more familiar with crocus as the first sign of spring here in the US, but if you live in the UK, it's the dainty little snowdrop that does the trick to remind us that spring will soon return. According to the Woodland Trust, a UK conservation charity, January 26th is the average date of first flowering in the UK for snowdrops, and many gardens will open their gates to invite visitors to see the pretty little flowers all in bloom. So you might be thinking, if the 26th is the date of the first flower, why are you telling me this today? Well, it's because today is the day that today's garden opens its gate for snowdrop season. And if you are in the area of today's garden, I don't want you to miss it. So where are we going? Today we are exploring Painswick Rococo Garden in Gloucestershire, England. Rococo, if you remember back to your school days, is the exceptionally fancy or exuberant or dramatic or excessive style of art and architecture that became fashionable at the end of the Baroque period in the 18th century. It's known for an abundance of curves and C shapes and S shapes. There are lots of flowers and floral motifs, intertwining vines, seashells, sometimes angels or birds or musical instruments mixed in with all of those curved lines. Asian motifs such as dragons and pagodas are also sometimes seen in Rococo design. It's a highly ornamental style, sometimes called the French style, and you might see examples with a light blue background framed by a white or cream or gilded carving of curves and swirls and things like that all around it. If you're familiar with Chippendale furniture, you've seen a more subdued version of Rococo style. For an example of an architectural ornamentation, the Würzburg residence in Germany is a very good example, and I've included a link in the notes for you to see a photograph of that. It's a distinct style, and you know what it is even if you can't quite place it. As soon as you see an example, you'll know exactly, oh yes, that's Rococo. And of course, a good example in the garden is today's garden, Painswick Rococo Garden. The original garden was created over a 10-year span from 1738 to 1748 by landowner Benjamin Hyatt as a pleasure garden for his family and guests. He included fanciful architectural follies, decadent plantings, and a theatrical landscape. The garden is located in a slight valley that offers stunning views of the countryside upon the approach to the garden. Originally, the garden was part of Painswick House, but today the two are operated separately. Fashions come and go, and the Rococo style fell out of fashion rather quickly. By the 19th century, much of the Rococo design of the garden was lost, and it was used for the more practical purpose of growing fruits and vegetables. As the decades went on, the garden fell into neglect and was completely abandoned by the 1950s and planted with timber. By the 1970s, the garden had disappeared as nature took over and what was there became overgrown. But all was not lost. In 1984, two garden historians, Thomas Mowell and Robert White, wrote an article on the Painswick Garden for Garden History, a journal of the Garden's Trust, after seeing a painting of the garden by Thomas Robbins the Elder from 1748. The owners of Painswick House at the time, Lord and Lady Dickinson, were inspired by that article to restore the garden as it looked in the painting. As a side note, there is the possibility that Thomas Robbins, the painter, was also, at least in part, the designer of the original garden. Since 1988, the garden has been managed by the Painswick Rococo Garden Trust. Today, the garden is the only complete Rococo garden left in England. It is of modest size, only about 6 acres, and includes a rather large kitchen garden that grows much of the food served in the garden's cafe. Visitors can get lost in the anniversary maze planted to show the numbers 250 to celebrate the 250th birthday of the garden back in 1998. There are several structures in the garden, including the exedra, which is a curving ornamental screen wall with Gothic arches built in the 1990s based on a similar structure shown in the Robbins painting. And the Red House, an ornate structure with stained glass windows and an elaborate ogee-shaped facade. Plantings in the garden are as close as possible to plantings seen in the painting. Throughout the year, visitors can enjoy vibrant colors as the seasons change. Snowdrops will be coming into full bloom very soon, followed by crocus and hellebores. By March, the bright yellows of daffodils and the sweet scents of hyacinth greet guests. In May, alliums, foxgloves, irises, and peonies grace the landscape. In June, daylilies, roses, lavender, and sweet peas entice visitors to linger a little longer as summer beckons. By August, hollyhocks, hydrangeas, and sunflowers remind visitors that summer is not over quite yet. By October, the trees take center stage as leaves turn to yellow, orange, and red. And by the end of November, it's time for the garden to rest. Painswick Rococo Garden offers gardening workshops and outdoor events throughout the year. For children, the garden hosts children's theater and offers a wooden play area for the little ones. Nature trails wind through the wooded areas for the active visitors, and of course there are places to sit to quietly contemplate the beauty of the Cotswolds. In addition to the cafe on site that I mentioned earlier, the garden also offers a gift shop and a plant nursery. The garden is open most days of the year, but does close for the month of December. Well-behaved dogs on a leash, along with their well-behaved humans, are welcome. And today is opening day for Painswick Rococo Garden. If you're able to visit, I would love to hear about your experience. Well, that's about it for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Join me again tomorrow to see where we're going next. If you like A Garden a Day, please consider liking, following, or subscribing to the podcast. It lets you know when a new episode is available, and it lets me know you like the show. Also, if you're able, please consider giving the show a 5-star review. I do thank you very much. If all goes well, I'll be right back here tomorrow. See you then.